gorgeous plant people, welcome back to Reading Mindfully. My name is Yana, and today I'm giving out tips for new plant parents. So let's just get into it. I'm giving out tips for new plant parents, and really these tips can be for any plant parent, whether you're a beginner, you're intermediate, or you're an expert. I feel like these tips we could use at any point in our plant journey. And so the first tip that I want to say is just to be patient. You need to be patient with plants. You're not going to know all these plants or even one plant overnight. I didn't learn how to take care of plants overnight. I started my plant journey about 3 or 4 years ago, and I started out with some plants that I wasn't really sure of how to take care of, and most of the plants in the beginning I don't have. But you're not gonna know how to take care of plants overnight. You have to be patient. You have to understand their care, their needs, what plants work for you and your environment. And so that's the first tip I just want to say, is just to have patience. Also, just to give yourself grace when a plant dies. And leading to the next one, I want to say, don't give up. So if your plants don't make it, you're losing plants, don't give up. Maybe there's a plant that you have to try again, or you even have to try 3 times. Often, if I really like a plant, I will give it up to 3 times, maybe 4 times if I really like a plant. But I often go with the 3-time rule. If I try it 3 times and it doesn't work, that's usually when I will call it a quits. But don't give up. I even have several videos on my channel of plants that I want to try again. But like I said, sometimes the plant, it's your fault because of user error, or you didn't water correctly, you didn't give it enough light. Sometimes the plant, you get it home and it just doesn't work out well because of your environment. Or sometimes the plant's not bad, the plant's not good. Like sometimes you'll get like a plant and it wasn't rooted properly, or it has some kind of underlying condition, and so you never really know what it is until you get it home to your environment. But like I said, sometimes you gotta try a plant 3 times. The next one I want to say is that quantity does not equal quality. And let me say that again for the people in the back. Quantity does not equal quality. For all these people, and I read comments, I see people even in Facebook groups or forums, people brag about how many plants they have in their collection. And they're like, oh, I have 100 plants. Oh, I have 430 plants. Oh, I have 500 plants. And some people make it seem like having a certain number of plants just makes you a better plant parent than the next person, or makes you cooler or whatever. But how do your plants look? If you have 100 plants, do they look good? Or half of them dead? Or are they thriving? If you have 400 plants, do they look good? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just because you have a large amount of plants doesn't automatically mean that you have a good collection. Like, how do your plants look? Are they thriving? Are you able to take care of them? Can you keep up with the care and maintenance? Are you overwhelmed? Those are things that I look for in a plant collection, not necessarily how many plants you have, but what they look like, the quality, and how you feel about your collection, if that makes sense. Also, I want to just say that don't just buy a whole bunch of plants just because you're trying to get your numbers up, or you're trying to get a certain amount of plants, or even if you're just trying to keep up with someone else. Just make sure that you're collecting the plants that you really like. It's not a numbers game. It's not a sprint to get to, be the first to get to the finish line. This is a marathon. It's a journey. It's really trying to understand the plant as a plant. You want to get to know it on a certain level. You want to get to know yourself. And through collecting plants, you really do get to know yourself, what kind of person you are, what your personality is. Sometimes if a plant just makes me mad, I know that I tend to get kind of frustrated kind of quickly. So with plants, it has taught me patience, and those are the things that you really want to learn on a plant journey. You want to learn lessons. You want to get things out of plants. You want to have a therapy. It's not just like an obsession, an addiction. You really want to just make it therapeutic. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be overwhelming. And so those are the things that you want to be mindful of. And this is especially when you're finding cheaper plants or rescue plants. Be careful of, buying rescue plants, because sometimes it's not always worth it because the plant is cheaper and you're just trying to get more plants into your collection. With rescue plants, you have to be careful of overwatering, underwatering. Does the plant have a disease? Does it have pests and things like that? And so that leads me to learn as much as possible. Learn as much as you can while you're on your journey. Like I said, you're learning the plants, you're learning about where the plant comes from, what kind of environment it comes from, where it lives, what it likes. Does it like moisture? Does it like humidity? Does it like to dry out between waterings? So make sure you're researching the plant, whether that's doing your own research, watching YouTube videos and things like that. And like I said, learn the environment, understand where the plant likes to live, where it would like to live in your home, because of course that's going to be way different from when the plant is coming from, whether the plant comes from, a tropical place, or if it was always grown in the greenhouse. You really have to be mindful of those things. And when you're learning in your plant journey, learn your aesthetic, because that is a major thing that no one really talks about. Buying plants can be really expensive. We all know that, whether they're common plants or they're rare plants. But what a lot of people don't talk about is the aesthetic. Do you like terracotta pots? Do you like white pots? Do you like ceramic pots? Do you like plastic pots? Learn your aesthetic so that way you can have in mind how much you're going to spend on your aesthetic, how you want your plants to look. And so that way you don't have to go and overhaul it later, which will cost you even more money. Like before, when I started out my plant journey, I was getting so many plants, and I had a ton of tiny plants, and so that caused me to buy shelves. And going through my journey, I just realized over time that I really don't like the shelf look. It caused me to buy more plants than I really wanted. It caused me to buy more tiny plants just so I could fit them on the shelves. And I just learned in my journey that that's not what I like. I don't like tiny plants like that. I feel like it makes my home look more cluttered than I want it to look. I want nice, fuller, bigger plants to make my home look more lush and botanical. And so if I had taken the time to realize that before, then I wouldn't have to overhaul those shelves, and I wouldn't have had to waste that money that I spent on those shelves. And yes, in your journey, it does take time to realize what you like, but if you also go more slowly and don't just buy a whole bunch of plants like I mentioned before, then you can save yourself a lot more money in the long run. So that's one thing I would say, is just to learn like what you like in your aesthetics and to collect more slowly, so that way you can have it grow at a nice pace, and you just don't have to buy a whole bunch of stuff and then buy shelves, and then because you have shelves you buy more plants. It's a vicious cycle. So like I said, you want to know the basic needs of the plant, so that way even with common plants, if you learn the basic needs of a plant, then you can transfer that to other plants. And so when you start buying more expensive plants, you already have that baseline of what you need to know, so that way it makes it easier to take care of more rare or expensive plants. I see a lot of people just jump right into buying uncommon and rare plants without having that basis of what a plant really needs. So they don't even start out with like a pothos or a snake plant, and they just jump into the more expensive things, and then they're like, all their plants are dying, and they're upset because they're losing so much money. Their plants cost so much, or they don't have access to those plants, whether they import them or they have to wait for another plant to come around. And so when you learn the basic needs of even the common plants, it really helps in the long run. Like I said, if you choose to move on to more expensive, rare, or uncommon plants. And that's why I would just say that it's always nice when you start with common plants. And I find myself this year, I've been buying a lot more common plants just because they're easier. they're they don't need so much. I don't have to do a lot of extra work. They end up being quite cheaper. And I like to have my plants out on display. I don't like to have a lot of plants that need to be behind a glass case or in a grow tent. And so I find that with a lot more common plants, I can have them in the open. And especially with lower light plants, I can put them in other areas of my home, and I don't have to worry so much about making sure that they're under a grow light or, things like that. The next tip I want to say is, maybe if you're having a difficult time in your collection of learning about plants, start with one genus at a time. That might make it a lot easier. I did that once when I tried alocasias. I had all my plants, and I was feeling like I needed something different. I wanted to do a challenge, and so I tried alocasias, and I even made a video about it. And I just felt like that helped me to really understand what that plant needs. I took the time to just, really figure out if I like alocasias. And now I know that alocasias aren't really my thing, but at least I took that time to just try one genus and, really understand if I really liked it. I did the same thing with calatheas. After years of having one, I had one prior. I came back years later and I was like, okay, let's try calatheas again. And I actually really enjoy calatheas and other prayer plants, but it really does give you the chance to just really learn that plant and what it really needs. The next tip, and I just want to say that this, I don't know what happened, but I feel like a lot of people take plant care or having a collection so seriously. And so for the next one, I just want to say is experiment, have fun. Some people are taking this hobbies to be so strict, and just like you have to do it this way, like you have to use this soil, you have to use charcoal, perlite, pumice, or you have to use these lights. Like, it's become a lot stringent than it used to be. When I first came into the plant hobby, it was a lot more fun, more flexible. People were trying things, being inventive. Now, if you know what you do and don't like, this doesn't really apply to you. But for instance, like I know I don't want to try pond or leca because I really like soil and I really like perlite, and I don't want to try other mediums because I do have a larger collection. And so other things like just trying things, maybe you want to propagate a plant in a different way, or you want to try growing a plant outside. I feel like a lot of people are so stringent and just they just are in the comment section and just like, no, that doesn't work for that plant, you have to do this. But you have to just try it and see what happens. I mean, that's really why I like watching Plantarina's channel, because she's always trying something new, always trying to see what she can do with the plant, and it just makes it so fun to watch. But of course you want to try within reason. If you can't afford to just be trying a whole bunch of methods, or you can't afford to try different mediums like pond or pumice or leca, things like that, then maybe this won't apply to you, or that portion won't apply to you. But of course you want to try different things within reason. And that would leads me to the next tip, is to set limits. You need to set limits when you have a plant collection, especially if you're the type of person who gets a little obsessive about things, or if you're a little impulsive. I would say that you really need to set a limit. And this can go for like if you need to set a limit on how many plants you have. I think my limit is around 150 plants. Anything more than that, I'm kind of just like really overwhelmed. And so the plant limit is based off of whatever number is comfortable for you, whatever you're able to take care of without getting overwhelmed a lot. And of course we all get overwhelmed, but if you're constantly feeling overwhelmed and stressed out about your plants, then maybe you need to make a limit of how many plants you need in your collection. The next thing you need to set a limit on is your budget. How much are you willing to spend on plants? Are you just going to keep buying plants? And do you put money aside for plants? Do you have a limit on how many plants you buy in a month? Do you have a limit on how much you spend on one particular plant? I know I try not to spend more than like $65-$70 on one plant. That might be different for you. You might have a budget of $30, $40, $20. It's up to you and what you can afford, but I would definitely say that you should have a budget when it comes to your plant collection, especially when it comes to buying plants. And because you're going to have to buy pots, unless you just leave the plant in a plastic pot that it comes in, you need to buy pots. So if you keep buying plants and you're not able to buy the pots to accompany those plants, then you kind of have a problem, because plants are going to grow, and if you can't afford to up pot them when they need to, maybe you shouldn't keep buying plants. You know, you maybe have to slow down, because there are additional costs as well. Like, what are you willing to do for your plants? Are you willing to sell plants to get more plants? Like, you just have to have limits on your plant collection. The next tip is a very important one, and one that I don't see talked about enough, and is to be careful of social media / where you get your advice from. And this is not to be mean or anything, but this is very important, because when it comes to social media, everyone shows the best pictures of their plant collection, because let's be honest, that's what sells, that's what makes money, that's what makes people click on a picture, that's what makes people like pictures. And so just know that everyone doesn't have the most perfect collection. Even if they show it on social media, they probably have a whole bunch of dead leaves at their house. Like, you never know. And so if you have dead leaves and stuff, don't be discouraged, because someone, even like you saw me have dead leaves, like, you never know what someone has in their collection, especially if they're not going to be, you know, forthcoming about it. But if you have dead leaves, yellow leaves, or your plants don't look like somebody else's plant, just don't worry about it, because social media is there to just show people what the good side of plants are, because they want you to buy plants. They want you to, you know, like their pictures and things like that. And you also have to worry about, or be careful about, trying to keep up with the Joneses, because they will have you broke. These people are not going to be paying your bills. They're not going to be feeding your kids or your dogs if you run out of money, because all you're doing is spending your money on plants. That's why you have to have limits, and you have to have a budget, or, you know, some kind of idea of how much you're going to spend on plants, because trying to keep up with someone else because you like their plant, it's not sustainable, and it's not going to be feasible, and you're going to learn that very quickly in your journey, that you won't be able to have every plant that you want. And it's just better to learn that now than to wait, you know, a month or a year down the line. Just know that just try not to keep up with other people. And it's also not bad to just admire someone's collection from afar. There are tons of plants that I've seen in other people's collection that I'm just like, oh man, I really wish I would have that plant, or I wish I could buy that plant, but either I can't afford it, or the plant doesn't grow well, or I really just don't like the plant for myself. But I have no problems with, you know, admiring it in someone else's collection. And I just want to say that, honestly, like, no one else is checking for you. Like, and that's not to be mean or anything, but nobody, at least not me anyway, I'm not checking to see if Sally Sue down the road has a philodendron McDowell. Like, I really could care less if you have a philodendron McDowell. The only thing I'm looking for is, you know, people to inspire me to be a better plant parent, or to show me how they grow their plants. I want to see how other people grow their plants, and see how other people do with their plants, or even what the potential of a plant is. I'm not checking to see if a person has a certain plant. Now, I might do that if I need additional care tips, but I'm not looking for somebody just to have a particular plant so I can say, ha ha, I got a ring of fire and you don't. Like, that's not what I'm looking for at all. I just want to see other people grow their plants so that I can get inspired to keep growing my plants, and maybe learn something new or something different that I'm, you know, not doing with my plant. And also, don't buy plants because somebody else says you should. If someone's like, this is the plant you need, or you must have this plant, like, do you really, like, are you gonna die tomorrow if you don't have that plant? Like, just because someone says you like need this plant, or this is the plant that you need in your collection, like, don't believe it. If the plant, if it really speaks to you and you can't get that plant out of your mind, like my Aglaonema stripes, then maybe you know, you could go buy the plant. But just because someone says that you absolutely need this plant doesn't mean you have to go buy it. And then as far as people and taking their advice, no one really talks about this, but you have to be careful of who you're taking your advice from. Are you taking your advice from someone who can grow the plant well? Have you seen the person's plant? Does it look like it's a good condition? Is it all shriveled up and dried up? Because that's not the person you want to take advice from. Or is the person having you do something really weird, and it's just like, are they having you buy things that you can't really afford for the plant? Like, you just have to be careful of whose advice you're taking. You want to make sure that you see the plant is in good condition. And if the plant looks like they just bought it and then turned around and made a care video of it, you also want to be careful of that. Because I see a lot of people buying plants and then like the next day or a week later or so, or even a month later, they're already making a care advice from it. Like, you kind of need to have a plant for at least 3 months, and that's the shortest I would say, before you can just go ahead and give advice on a plant. I know when I bought prayer plants, I've tried to wait like 3 months or longer to go ahead and make a care video. And I did have a lot of people asking me how I was caring for them. And I wanted to be able to work with the plants and get a feel for how I, could grow them before I go ahead and make a care video and try to give like all this knowledge out here. But you really just want to make sure of who you're taking advice from, because I do see a lot of people just, oh, I just bought this plant and it was already this big and now I'm going to give care advice. Like, no. I need to know that you actually like grew the plant out, you were able to maintain it before you can go ahead and give me advice. So I just wanted to put that out there. The next one is just to make friends. Get out there, make some plant friends, and so that way you guys can have some kind of community around plants. And sometimes plant collecting is all, is built up to be this very like friendly hobby, but sometimes it can be quite lonely as well, especially if you live in an area where there aren't a lot of plant people around you, if you're not sure if there's any plant people. So reach out on social media to other people to see like who's in your area, or even if they're not in your area, just chat somebody up and see if you can make friends, because this also helps you learn about the plants or learn about any other plants. It can also help you if you want to trade in the future for plants, or if you like to sell plants and things like that. Just building a community is very beneficial. Even if you're not talking about plants, you're just talking about your day. You never know what's going on in someone's day. And just asking about how someone's day went or what they're going through can be really beneficial, because it has been a rough couple of years, and some people just need to be reached out to and just know that somebody is there. And the next one I'm going to say is, like, when you get your plants and you have your plant collection, try to create some kind of schedule or build a system so that way it helps you maintain your plant collection a little bit easier. So if you are going to water your plants, maybe you check in on your plants once or twice a week, and then you water weekly. Try to kind of have some kind of schedule. If you want to do your pest maintenance, maybe you wipe your leaves off once a month or once a week. If you check for pests weekly, that really helps. I know I started doing that, especially with more plants. I want to make sure that I'm not missing any pests, and I just don't wake up one day and have a thrip infestation, because that stuff is stressful. But it helps to really have some kind of schedule, even to try to automate things. So I recently just went on Amazon and I bought some like timers for my grow lights, so that way I don't have to turn my grow lights on every morning. And so it really does help to try to automate a lot of things as much as possible. I know a lot of people buy self-watering pots because that helps, especially for your more thirsty plants, but try to automate things as much as possible and create a schedule for your plant care and your plant maintenance. And just the next thing is just to try to get on top of things when you see it. So in your plant maintenance and like your pest management, if you see a pest, try to get it as early as possible, and so that way it doesn't get really bad and just like decimate your entire collection. Because trust me, if you let it go and it just swarms through your collection, you will be overwhelmed. And so as soon as you see a thrip, a spider mite, you see some webbing, or you see a little fuzzy mealybug, like hop in there if you can and try to deal with it right then and there. And that's whether you use like alcohol for mealybugs, or if you use like an insecticide for some thrips, or spider mites. I like Captain Jack's. Or if it gets really bad, then you have to use the systemic granules, but make sure you try to take care of it as soon as you see it, so that way it doesn't get really bad. But the next tip is when things do get really bad and you're overwhelmed with your collection, it really does help. And I say this all the time, and I haven't seen a lot of videos about this before until I started decluttering my plants, but decluttering really helps when you find yourself overwhelmed and you find that you don't love a lot of plants in your collection. Decluttering helps so much. If you don't like a plant as much as you did before, and you tried to help the plant's not growing well, or you're just not feeling it, declutter it. Give it to someone else who will enjoy it. Sell the plant, trade the plant. Decluttering is key in your plant collection, and really in every area of your life. If you don't have clothes that you can't wear, you can't fit, then rather make yourself feel bad about not being able to fit those clothes, just get rid of them. Give them to the Goodwill or whatever you got to do. The next thing it helps is just to organize things. When you organize your plant collection and you're able to see every plant in your collection, it really does help. Because trust me, when you start to forget about plants, and then one day you're going around and you see just something dead and shriveled up, and you're just like, what happened? And what is this plant? Like, it really does help to organize your plant collection, so that way you're able to see all your plants, you're able to not forget about certain plants, and just makes your home look a lot better as well. And you start to feel a lot better. I know I feel a lot better when I organize my plants, when I reorganize, and it just feels like a weight's been lifted off. And the next thing is just to try to compartmentalize. So if it helps you to break up your plant collection in zones. So if you're like watering your plants, you're doing pest maintenance, you go to zone 1, you go to zone 2. So behind me I have like zone 1 here, I have zone 2, zone 3. And so if I'm watering, I'll hit zone 1 and I go around and check all the plants in one zone. I'll move to the next zone. And sometimes, so if you have a lot of plants, you have 100 plus plants, and you can't water all the plants in one setting or one watering sitting, whatever, and it's too overwhelming, just water zone 1. Come back the next day or later that day and water zone 2. It really does help when you break things down. It makes it so much easier to manage your collection depending on what size it is. Even if you only have 30 plants and that's overwhelming for you, just break it down so that way you're able to take care of your plants. And so I just wanted to go ahead and give these tips. Like I said, I designated this to be for beginners, but really it's for whoever finds it to be very beneficial. And so the thing that I want people to take away is that your plants are supposed to be a therapy. It's supposed to be a fun hobby. Some people, it's like a lifestyle, way of life. It's not supposed to be stressful stress inducing, like make you feel anxious and cause you to just be overwhelmed all the time. If you ever get to that point, then you really need to reevaluate your collection and what you want out of your plants. And so I would very much encourage you to really just look into your plant collection and look into yourself to see what you want out of your collection, so that way you and your plants can grow together, and it's not like one plant or your plants are running you. It's kind of, you want that harmony. You don't want your plants to take over your life. You want to be cohesive. You want to live together in harmony. And plants should just never take over. If you're afraid to like go somewhere, or you don't want to leave your plants because you're going on vacation or things like that, like you really need to evaluate how you need to do whatever you need to do to make your plant collection work for you. So that's why I just wanted to go ahead and make this video, and so that way it might help somebody, because oftentimes I do get questions about how I maintain my collection, especially since it's a larger collection. I could always make a video about that too, how I manage my larger collection, but I just wanted to go ahead and make this initial video, and so that way hopefully it can help someone. If you guys have anything that you took away from this video, please leave it in the comment section below. If you have anything to add, I would really appreciate that. As always, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching my video, liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.